On today's show, are the Knicks and the Wolves more defined by their ceiling or their floor, or maybe just their average? It's a big question on how much you believe in those two teams. We're going to break down both of their games. They got big wins yesterday. We're going to talk about it on today's All-NBA show. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show. You
right there, JT. I did have the wrong mic selected. How's that sound? A little bit better?
Sounds much better. There it is.
You figured it out for us on the fly. Monday edition of the All-NBA show presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague. He's the host of Hoops Tonight over at The Volume, Jason Timpf. We had a great slate of basketball, man. One of these Sundays, where you get basketball from sunrise to sunset. It was nice.
Yeah, the NBA does a good job of filling the void once the NFL steps out. The NBA has so many good trump card national TV matchups they can throw out there that are that'll draw the eyeballs. They just needed to have a day to kind of command, and the NFL steps out. They step in. A lot of entertaining hoops. I did miss seeing you at the Run yesterday, though.
Every time I go to the Run, with JT and I have a private run we go to, pretty good hoops. Every time I go, I'm like, am I retiring? Is this the last time? I don't know. So
you did make one of the most impressive defensive plays I've ever seen 2 weeks ago. So my buddy comes in town from Tucson. Him and I have all this playing experience. So him and I have really good lob chemistry on backdoor cuts. So I cut back door. My buddy throws me a lob. Adam reads the play, jumps vertical, and tips the ball away directly into the basket for
the game winner. I couldn't believe it. It was game point, I think, both directions.
An amazing highlight.
I was so mad, man. But like I said, after that one went in, I'm like, I think I'm retired. I think that was it. We got some great stuff today. But real quick, you're making your debut at Ball Arena later this week. Is that right?
Yes, I am. So, okay, I have a problem. I'm a little bit of a homebody, and I got a big screen TV in my basement that I love watching hoops on. So, I have a habit of being like, oh, I should go to a game. And then I'm like, I'll just go down to my basement. Well, I finally bit the bullet and got tickets. I'm going to the Lakers-Nuggets game on Thursday. I'm super excited.
No way.
On Thursday, I should say. I will be in section 104. So anybody out there wants to stop by and say hi. But I'm super, super excited because tons of star power. I think both teams really need this game. The Lakers desperately need a signature win because they've been crappy in every big game this season. And the Nuggets are sliding pretty bad, so they need it too. So I think it's just going to be a really good game. I'm super excited to go. After the stream, I'll be picking your brain, sir, about all the logistic things that I should be aware of as I head downtown. So we'll see.
Yeah. I'll give you the inside scoop. If you stay on your best behavior, that's my thing. No, I'm teasing you, of course. The Nuggets, it's funny because I'm seeing this take on the timeline, and it's completely fair. It's why is everybody saying the Lakers are fake and they're terrible, this or that, and the Nuggets are contenders when they have the same record? And it's the truth right now. It's hard to make the argument for Denver, even though I will. Probably later on in the show, I'll still probably defend them a little bit because I still think there's some noise in the signals there. But we'll talk about that one later. We're going to start with our FanDuel game breakdown. And today's breakdown is going to be on the Knicks dominating the San Antonio Spurs to the tune of 114-89 in the Garden. This was the national televised game. It was kind of the marquee game of the day. And the Spurs were riding an undefeated February. The entire month they go without losing, 11 in a row, very impressive streak. And in the beginning of this game, they were up big on the Knicks. It looked like they were just going to dominate them. And you're watching the first quarter and you're like, my God, are the Spurs just by far the best team in basketball right now? It's possible that's the truth. But the Knicks rallied behind a 26-2 run that was equally as impressive, actually more impressive, because it was a haymaker. It started with Jalen Brunson, and it finished with some incredible play by their role players and their defense. So what stood out to you about this one? Once they seized control, San Antonio just played catch-up the rest of the game and never was able to get it close enough to overtake them. So what stood out to you, and what was so impressive about what the Knicks did to the streaking Spurs?
Well, there's so much to get into because, they really controlled this game on both ends of the floor. Their defense to me was the most impressive. I think that's the biggest difference between last year's team and this year's team. I just think they have a better fastball on the defensive end of the floor. They really boxed in San Antonio's guards. Steph Castle, I've noticed, has struggled a little bit with some of the bigger, more physical, like forward defenders, because he kind of just plays off of 2 feet, and he's so dependent on controlling the radius around him with his strength that when he goes up against like an OG Anunoby or even kind of like a refrigerator-sized guard like Josh Hart, he can have some like problems dealing with those bigger physical perimeter defenders. And then obviously Dylan Harper struggled in this game. The guy that you lean on there, if you're San Antonio, is like, oh, we have De'Aaron Fox. We have this all-star guard who's going to be able to kind of steady us in ball screens. And they held him to just 7 points. Victor Wembanyama ended up scoring quite a bit, but they turned him over a bunch of times, but just getting physical underneath him and swarming him on his drives. They ended up getting out and transition a ton in this game off of the turnovers they forced. And then on the offensive end of the floor, like there's so many specific things, like Jalen Brunson's pull-up threes against the drop coverage. He was torching them with that. All game long, I thought the Knicks did a wonderful job of passing the ball across the court against the loaded San Antonio defense. They generated 23 unguarded catch and shoot threes in this game, which I think is a super impressive number against such a good defense. Obviously, Mikal Bridges, his corner 3-point shooting on those skips was super valuable. Mohamed Diawara just staying aggressive, even though he missed a couple of open looks early. He ended up getting 13 threes up in his 15-minute shift, which is kind of
a record, an NBA record.
Yeah, I saw that from Nate Duncan. It was an impressive stat. But yeah, and then he ended up making 4 of those, had a big defensive play against Steph Castle at the rim late. And it, honestly, just a really well-rounded effort. Even Cat, I thought, was better than it looked in the numbers. Like his ability to, like, he's kind of a hard matchup for San Antonio because they don't really have forwards. And so, like, he was getting guarded by Steph Castle. They were trying to switch action, but then he was just posting De'Aaron Fox, which was giving the San Antonio defense some issues. This is a tough matchup. And honestly, if I'm a Knicks fan, I'm thinking, man, if San Antonio could somehow win the West and we can get out of the East, we might have a shot at this thing.
So that was one of the questions I was going to ask you later on, and I kind of want to save it for after we analyze the game. But I am curious, just because, you know, when you have great teams like the Spurs, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, where's their vulnerability? Because the playoffs are all about your vulnerabilities. Can teams pick at them? And is there something in that, you know, in your weakness that you just can't plug? You know, and so it sounds like you feel like there is something there, and I'll get to it. But I just want to stick to this game for a second. You mentioned a ton of fast breaks. The Knicks had 40 fast break points. The leader in the NBA is like 19 and a half fast break points per game. So they doubled that up. But what's crazy is the Spurs had 38. And this wasn't exactly the highest scoring game, 114 to 89. 89 points for the Spurs. 38 of those were fast break points. That actually is the story of the game for me, is that the Spurs could not score in the half court. In fact, they couldn't even generate very good offense in the half court. And that's where I want to start with him, because you mentioned Wemby had some buckets, especially early. You kind of felt like, okay, maybe this is going to be a game for him. But he got shut off, and more importantly, I thought the ball handlers and shot creators for San Antonio got shut off in this game. And when the shutoff happened, it never got turned back on. It was somewhere around, you know, late first quarter. The rest of the game, I didn't feel like the Spurs had 3 good consecutive possessions.
Yeah, you know, I think part of it is playing Wemby into a specific shot profile. Like, by the way, he's one of the things with Wemby in these last few games is, like, even in these ugly rock fight games where nothing looks easy, he's still putting up numbers because he's just cleaning up so much stuff around the basket. And he did have some insane highlights in that game yesterday. One of the actions that San Antonio ran to great effect was essentially having one of their smaller guards, like De'Aaron Fox, set essentially a wide pin down. They clear the side. They have Wemby start kind of left short corner. They had Fox go down and pin down. He'd curl off of it. He ended up getting a bunch of dunks off of that. Like, just went right around Jalen Brunson for a dunk. He had another one where he pump faked on Mitchell Robinson. He left his feet and he went and just posterized OG Anunoby. That was the big highlight dunk that was going around yesterday. So, like, they had some success with that specific action, but anything else where Wemby was catching the ball, they were getting physically up underneath him and knocking him off balance on his jump shot. And this is actually something that stood out to me with Wemby in France. If you dug into the numbers for his shooting during the earlier phases of his development, when he has his feet set and he's in rhythm, it's probably going in. But, like, he can get his feet twisted if you get up underneath him on some of those shots. And I just thought the Knicks all game played him into tougher, more off-balance jump shots, made everything difficult around the rim. Every time he put the ball on the floor, they were digging down and forcing turnovers, getting up underneath his handle. And again, so much for San Antonio is predicated on the ability of Steph Castle to break them down at the point of attack. And he was just struggling to get past those forwards to get to his spots. And so then it became a De'Aaron Fox thing. And, I was actually thinking about this, Adam, in general with San Antonio. It's one of the weird things with them that's got me just a little bit off of them. Like, because they go undefeated in February. And there's all these reasons to think that they're just like a bona fide top tier championship contender. But is De'Aaron Fox even a top 25 player in the league? Is he even a top 30 player in the league? Like, I'm not sure. It's up for debate. Like, you could probably argue him as high as 20 and as far back as 40, depending on who you ask, right? And I just think too many of these games are going to devolve down to, can De'Aaron Fox create a shot and pick and roll? Because these guards are too young, and Wemby's going to get pushed off his spot in some of these one-on-ones. So the only way they're going to break the defense down is through these Fox ball screens. And I just think it's a lot of pressure on a player that's not going to be as good as the dudes he's going against in most of these series.
Yeah, but he's got to be, and I think that's like if you believe in the Spurs, that was what was missing yesterday, and I kind of led with it about how the ball handlers and shot creators just had nothing for the Knicks in this game. And it felt to me a little bit, I think sometimes this happens when you're on a streak where the game kind of follows a similar script and things are kind of easy. So when something gets taken away, it's been so long since it's been taken away that you don't necessarily respond. And I thought that's what I saw, especially out of De'Aaron Fox, but a little bit out of Stephen Castle too, where they kind of got confused or stymied. And there was no second. There was no like, okay, well, then I'm going to do this to them. It was kind of just, it almost felt like they got confused a little bit about how they were supposed to attack. But there's somebody I want to credit more than anybody else. Does anybody in the entire NBA understand their role as well as Josh Hart? This was an all-time Josh Hart game, in my opinion. So you start the game, and part of why the San Antonio went up is Knicks have been seeing this defense for a while. It's not new. But they put Wemby on Josh Hart and just said, don't guard him. You get to be full-time rim protector, and Josh Hart's going to be out there. He missed everything early, and you could tell, like, the Knicks, you were like, okay, well, maybe the Knicks, they're easily breakable because of this. But then he turned into Draymond Green. He did the thing where he gets the ball at the top of the key every time it swings and quickly will pitch it to one of their scorers and set a quick ball screen. So if Wemby's deep in the paint, all of a sudden he has to step out of the paint all the way up to be able to guard the ball handlers. He did that. He slashed. He found seams. He did the defensive stuff he always does, although it was turned up to 11 in that game where he was just grabbing offensive rebounds and loose balls and poking the ball away and doing all that stuff. But offensively, he turned a giant weakness, they're not going to guard me, into a giant strength. Well, we're going to punish you with this quick ball movement and screens and DHOs and different things. And I just thought he executed it perfectly. I couldn't believe, and he understands what his role is. At first, he didn't shy away from the shot. When the shot wasn't falling, he said, okay, let's go to phase 2 here. And he just executed it so well. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, to your point, the pull-up threes against the deep drop that New York was getting in a lot of cases was because of that specific dynamic, just running up, sprinting up into his screen. So there's more separation. So Wemby's too far back. They ended up hitting 9 pull-up jump shots in this game, and I think that was a big part of it. The other thing, too, he ended up getting a couple of finishes at the rim on Wemby where there's kind of like a science to finishing on Wemby that you can see some of the players in the league have started to figure out a little bit. And it's really just bumping him right as he jumps. And he had a basket on a cut. And then like 2 possessions later, he had one where he drove down the middle. And just right at the end, right when Wemby was planting to jump, Josh just bumped into him with that left shoulder and then extended out with that right hand. And he was able to finish. Again, just like finding a way to attack the coverage, setting quick ball screens, finding a handful of opportunities to finish around the rim. He had 7 assists in this game, controlling things on the glass. And again, like as I mentioned earlier, he was one of their better defensive options on Steph Castle as well in this game.
Yeah, he did a lot of stuff in this one, but Josh Hart to me was the guy who flipped this. I saw a stat that it was the most picks he had set in a game yet so far this season.
Oh, really?
And that's what happens when they sag off of you. You just become, okay, we're going to go quick into actions. And that was the quickness. He catches the ball and he already knows where he's going to go with it next. That makes it difficult to recover from if you're doing that deep drop. The next one is, you talked about Karl-Anthony Towns. I thought he was appropriately out of the way in this game. He did some stuff defensively, and he filled in the gaps. He grabbed some monster offensive rebounds. How many did he have offensive rebound-wise? He had 5 offensive rebounds, and they stood out. They were loud.
But he was a low usage player in this one. 12 points, 14 rebounds, 5 of those on the offensive end. And one of my questions I've always had with this Knicks team is just what is Cat's role on it? If there always has to be a guy that has to sacrifice, and I feel like they run best when he does that role. He's the counterweight to what you're doing, not the weight. So it's okay, we're going to stretch the floor, we're going to play pick and pop, we're going to do all this stuff, but the odds are you're not going to get the ball 9 times out of 10. You're just the thing that stretches the court. I thought that's what he was in this game, and it's why they look so good on the offensive end.
Yeah, to your point, he was very timely with his attacks, and there was a specific dynamic with him that was creating advantage before he even really got the ball in many cases. Like the Spurs were double teaming him on basically every single post up, which is why he ended up with 4 turnovers. But there were a lot of good looks they generated off of that dynamic. So they start Steph Castle on him. They switch the initial few ball screens. The Spurs were sending doubles on the cat post-ups of De'Aaron Fox after the switch. They were sending those doubles almost before the catch in many cases. They ended up getting a couple open looks just skipping the ball as San Antonio was doubling cat there. And then they tried all sorts of different things. They were like, okay, well, let's see if we don't switch it. And then that ended up causing some confusion where there were some botched switches that led to easy slips. They tried scram switching with Wemby, where they had like Wemby run over to guard cat as he was going to post up. And it led to like a delay in a rotation from Julian Champagny that ended up giving up a cut on the baseline for a layup. Like there was just a lot of like chaos that was caused by Cat just being out there and the fact that San Antonio wasn't really sure about how they wanted to guard him. And then he did have a couple of good one-on-ones against Steph Castle too. He had one in the early third quarter where he just ripped baseline and ended up getting that dunk. And then the offensive rebound piece that goes back to the advantage that we were talking about in this matchup, which is like, the Spurs, especially because Harrison Barnes has been so bad in the big games. Like Harrison Barnes has consistently struggled when they've played really, really high level opponents. And he's really their only like forward, like big forward, right? So like they'll go to 2 big looks where they'll have Wemby and Cornette out there at the same time, but they don't really have a matchup for a guy like Cat. And so it's one of the many reasons why this matchup has been an issue for the Spurs.
Let's go through some of the other guys for the Knicks because I thought this was an all-around team win. I mean, a lot of guys did stuff really well. Mikal Bridges is, I think, maybe the most hot and cold player that they have in their out of their starters. But to your point, he was knocking down the corner 3. He also had 5 steals. I have a note in here from All-NBA Stats and Research, 1.63 points per touch in transition. There was a lot of transition opportunities, and he was finishing them. I thought this was an A-plus game from him. And he is a swing player for them because I feel like you get consistency from Brunson. You get it from OG Anunoby, Josh Hart. Bridges is the one that could be a swing player, and this was an A-plus game from him. And you're like, when you watch it, you go, man, they have guys everywhere.
Yeah, so early in the game, especially when the Knicks were doing a great job skipping the ball across the court, his weak side 3-point shooting was huge. He hit one of those pull-up threes against Wemby in drop coverage off of one of those screens from Josh Hart, just kind of settling into that pull-up running towards his left. And then this has been something that stood out to me a ton, really since the Celtics series last year. But like, he's one of the best dig down and recover guys in the league off the ball. Like, he's so good at like seeing a driver, getting down, throwing that long ass arm of his in there to get it.
Long arms and light on his feet. It's a deadly combo.
Yep, and he can rotate back out of those situations. Like, really, the Knicks defense when it's at its best. Like, I was watching this lineup. I think it was like early second quarter, if I remember correctly. But it was like Bridges, Anunoby, Hart, Diawara, and Cat. So it was like Karl-Anthony Towns, and then just every one of their big athletic forwards at the same time on the floor. And so like it turns into this dynamic where like, yeah, they have this weak point where they're constantly getting attacked, but they're just very good at rotating and shrinking the floor around that specific problem. And like at their best, it's when Mikal is getting a ton of steals and deflections by being active both on and off the ball. OG Anunoby doing the same thing, Josh Hart doing the same thing, and then running out and transition off of it.
Yeah. Anything else on their side that stood out too? Actually, I do have one more. The other piece of their sort of big 4, I guess, OG Anunoby put on a defensive clinic in this game.
Yep.
And he guarded everyone on the roster. So I have these numbers again. 17 half-court matchups against De'Aaron Fox, 2 points allowed. 10 half-court matchups against Stephon Castle, 2 points allowed. 7 half-court matchups against Wemby, 0 points. So you're talking about guard, wings, and big. He guards all of them and holds to a total of 4 points. He was just a monster. And I think I see it in the chat. You were referencing it earlier. one of the things about Wemby is he's so tall that like length doesn't bother him. So it's almost a wasted thing. What bothers him is strength, especially strength like, below your centers of gravity at the knees and these different things. And he represents that. He's so much stronger than Wemby that he can just get right into him, get low, and Wemby's never on balance. But then to transfer that to De'Aaron Fox, who's also a tough cover in a completely opposite way, it shows you how valuable he is.
Yeah, I thought OG did a really nice job in his Fox possessions of giving space and like kind of baiting him into these like tougher pull-up jump shots. And Fox was content to settle in this game for whatever reason, although Fox has had a pretty good jump shooting season. But again, like that's the thing, like it's when it comes to being a multi-positional defender, it's about adjusting your strategy based on who you're going against. So like to your point, on Wemby, it's physical, it's up underneath, it's winning the battle on the ground, it's using that like lower center of gravity like you talked about. Against Fox, it's using length, it's giving space, it's using anticipatory angles to beat him to spots, turning him into a tougher jump shot maker over the top. And like ultimately that's what's made OG Anunoby such a gifted defender, is he's kind of got a tool in his bag for each different type of offensive player that he can go against.
Yeah. So let's move over to the Spurs for a second here, because one of the things, they are a three-point shooting team, and they're going to beat you because they're going to get a lot of threes. But I wonder if physicality is there, and this is true of a lot of teams, but I wonder if it's especially true. They struggled to get good threes last night, I thought, because of physicality. And it's so funny. For the longest time, I've watched the NBA the last handful of years and thought some teams are allowed to get away with it, sometimes they're not. But I think the more I watch it, the more it really is that there are defenders that know how to be physical without fouling, or at least in a way that won't be called. The Knicks are one of them. And I thought that really disrupted the Spurs. And it makes you think, like, some of this is just they shoot poorly from three, you're going to lose games. But part of me wonders, like, if you can take them out, if you have the personnel to take them out of their comfort zone from three, then they become significantly less dynamic. So are they vulnerable to teams that can be as physical and as strong as New York was against them last night? Or is it just a bad night for them?
I think so. I think like one of the things that I've noticed with San Antonio's shooting this year, particularly with their main spot up guys. So let's take, Julian Champagnie and Devin Vassell, for example. Yeah. Like those are their two main guys that are going to take high volume catch and shoot threes. And Devin actually had a decent game last night. But Julian ended up missing. He ended up hitting a wide open one, but missing some of the more tough ones. So I think one of the upsides with San Antonio is both of those guys will take like more congested, contested, like tight space catch and shoot threes. And both of those guys, the majority of the threes they take are contested, which I actually think benefits them, because when you get against really good defenses, the open looks are few and far between. And so you need someone who's able to confidently step in. Like, I think Michael Porter Jr. used to do this for the Nuggets for years in a way that was super valuable. Just like, yeah, someone's there, but it just doesn't bother him, right? You need to have that type of shooting. That type of shooting is more streaky, though. And if you look at Julian Champagnie and Devin Vassell, their percentages when they're wide open are in the mid-40s. But when they're contested, it goes to the low 30s, mid-30s, which, again, wow. I think there's value in their aggression there. That's what gives them the upside when they're hitting. But they're more streaky in that department. And so they can have games where those guys are missing those shots. The key to generating the quality shots, though, is breaking down the defense at the point of attack. And when Wemby is dribbling into the teeth of the defense and he's turning it over against multiple defenders instead of passing it out against multiple defenders, and when Steph Castle's struggling against bigger physical defenders and can't get to his spots, I actually thought Dylan Harper got to the rim a couple of times yesterday.
Some nice ones.
Yeah, Dylan's a super exciting young player. I'm super interested to see what he becomes in the long run. But when I look at those guards struggling to break the defense down, De'Aaron Fox is struggling against more of a passive contesting defense from OG Anunoby. They just aren't generating the amount of quality threes that they need for their best shooters. Again, because like when you get to these unguarded ones, and San Antonio actually did get quite a few unguarded threes yesterday, but when you dig into it, it's like some of these dudes like Steph Castle, Keldon Johnson, these are guys that are going to hit 30, 35% of those types of looks on their best day. You know what I mean? Like, so a lot of it is about tilting it towards the right kinds of shots. So to your point, you get physical up underneath Wembanyama, you stay glued to their best spot up guys, and you get physical with their younger guards. There's a version of this where you can play their shot quality towards types of shots that they're just mostly not going to hit unless Champagny and Vassell are making every single contested three they take, which they have nights like that. We've seen that. It was what happened in Detroit. In Detroit, Vassell and Julian Champagny made every damn contested three they took. But you can play them into a more streaky set of results that way.
And what's impressive is I think oftentimes with the type of identity you're talking about, if you get hot early, then you make the tough ones later. And they got good looks early. And New York was still able to shut that off. So there was a good rhythm for them in the first 5 minutes of this game. But once it just turned and never came back. By the way, Devin Vassell, this is just a fun little one. He's first team all leaning jump shot. Guys that can shoot when they're drifting to the side or even just tilting. His average shot is probably taken at a 25-degree angle, just falling to the side. Even when he's open sometimes, he'll take
forward.
Jumps forward or just lean a little bit to his left. And it's his comfort zone. But, that thing goes in. So it's interesting. I don't know. Who else is a leaning jump shooter? I'm trying to think of other guys who are good at this where they're just constantly drifting to one way or the other.
Oh, that's a good question.
Duncan Robinson does it a lot. He can run into something, catch, and kind of drift, but he's more vertical drifting. His body's upright. He's just moving.
J.R. Smith when he was still out there doing his thing was like that too. You're right though. He does add a little bit of flair on every single one of his jump shots.
He just he kind of bends to this he's falling to the side, and it's amazing. It balances him or something.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to our title question here. The Knicks now have wins over the Celtics 2 times, the Spurs 2 times, the Cavs 2 times. They've also beat the Nuggets, the Wolves, and the Rockets. That's a pretty impressive resume for a team. Are they more, but they also have some ugly losses. They have ugly stretches. They have, I think well-defined and described weaknesses. But are they more defined, in your opinion, by their ceiling or their floor or their average? I think the Spurs are a team that we look at their average and say, yeah, they're just consistently good. They lose some games, they win some whatever, but their average is great. Are the Knicks a team that we should actually define by, yeah, but their best games are so good?
Well, and it's the opposite of last year. Last year, this was what they couldn't do. They were 0-8 against the top seeds in both conferences at Boston, Denver, OKC, if I remember correctly. And then if you just take all their matchups against teams that were in the top 10 in point differential last year, they had the 17th best record in the NBA, and they had the 12th best point differential in those games. This year, the Knicks are 10-7 against teams that are in the top 10 in point differential. That's the second best record in the entire NBA behind Detroit. And they have the 4th best point differential in those games. And I think ultimately it really just comes down to the fact that they have a much better fastball than they did last year. I think there's 2 main things that I would dig into there. One, Mikal Bridges is having a way better defensive season than he did last year. And in general, the team's leaning a little bit more into their depth. They're playing better defense more consistently this year. Josh Hart actually making himself more playable offensively has allowed them to field more of their best defensive players at the same time more often. And then on the offensive end, I think this is one of the biggest keys with this team and their success this year. The Knicks are generating way more spot-up opportunities because of an emphasis on dribble penetration early in possession. So this year they're generating 33 spot-up opportunities per game, 33, which ranks second in the entire NBA. If you go to last season, they were 14th in the number of spot-up possessions that they were generating every single game. So a dramatic difference in how many of those types of possessions that they're generating. Again, a spot-up opportunity in its very simplest is just a defender sprinting at an offensive player who's in scoring position. In the half court, that is the most efficient play type you can get, other than a layup, is a spot-up opportunity, because the three-point shot is obviously valuable there, or every offensive player is more effective driving a closeout than they are driving a set defense. So, the emphasis on playing faster, early drives, early skips. Again, that was sticking out to me all game yesterday, just how quickly they were getting the ball across the court when San Antonio would bring their low man over. Just emphasis on those types of sequences prevents you from leaning too much on Brunson ball, which can be great, but can also cool off. It gives you more of a high floor on a game-to-game basis in the NBA, and I just think they're better. I just think they're substantially better on offense than they were last year, and substantially better on defense. The only reason I'm not necessarily higher on them as a contender relative to last year is because the top of the league is better too. But the East is wide open. They have every bit of a chance to win it as they did last year, if not a little bit more, without the Boston problem. And I mean, they solved that problem last year anyway. And there are some teams that would come out of the West that they should feel good against. I would be really concerned about them versus a healthy OKC just because of how dependent they are on Jalen Brunson's shot creation. But like they match up pretty well against San Antonio. They would give some problems to those middle tier teams in the West. There's a pathway there, and their fastball is better. That's why if you're a Knicks fan, you should feel better than you did last year.
I think I'm buying their ceiling, but my concerns are less what you're saying. I'm actually unimpressed with the top of the league outside of OKC. I think OKC to me is the team that, as the year has gone on, their best punch, which, by the way, we've barely seen. It's an underrated thing about the Thunder is that we actually haven't seen their best punch for a while. I can make excuses for a lot of teams, including the Denver Nuggets, and say we haven't seen their best punch all year. But that's true of OKC, and they've got the record they have. So that's what separates them. But outside of that, I actually look at all these teams and just say, yeah, they have real vulnerabilities. Even against, okay, it's a tough matchup against the Denver or whatever. They still are not, there's still vulnerabilities on that side that the Knicks can exploit. So I look at this and say, the only reason I buy the Knicks' ceiling more than their floor, because in the playoffs, I think they're going to get the effort that they got from their guys last night defensively. And that's a really, really strong defensive team when they do that. By the way, I think they've been number one in defense for 15 plus games now. In the NBA, the Knicks have, which is, pretty key. So what I look at though is more that Detroit has their number and they don't get a chance to disprove that. And I think that those things actually do matter. It's the same for San Antonio, OKC. I'm not saying it means they will beat them, but I do think it is this like variable in the equation that says, you know what, there's one team out there for the Knicks, one team out there that doesn't fear you at all. And some of your antics and hustle and diving on the floor, that's not going to bother the Detroit Pistons. But you might not have to play them. You never know how the playoffs will unfold, and even if you do play them, we'll see how it goes. But I buy the Knicks' ceiling. I just think there are teams like the Knicks. I think Denver's one of them. I think Minnesota's another one where you look at what are they capable of now, or what do they consistently do? And those teams are all capable of great play. The Knicks have shown it more consistently over this last 2-month stretch. And so I buy their upside. I think their upside is who they actually are, and they're just going to have to survive the rest of the season.
I'm not quite as high on them as I am on the Cavs, but I do think
you love your Cavs.
I'd probably put them 2 on that list. Ironically, as much as I've appreciated Detroit this year, I just am so concerned about like what happened in that Spurs game where it's like their offense can completely turn into a mess where Cade is forced to take a bunch of jump shots and they don't really have a solution. All those teams are so good for various reasons. I just think the Cavs are a little bit more well-rounded, but the Knicks are right there. I think they have a very, very good chance. I just keep coming back to the same exact things. Will Cat make a major mistake in a big playoff game like he's done so many times over the years? Or will there be a specific action that they just can't guard because of their 2 multiple weak points? Or, they're just, I haven't had those concerns alleviated enough to like really move them into favorite status, but I do think their fastball is better than it was last year.
I think all those things are fair. Let us know in the comments. We're going to take a break now, but let us know in the comments what you think about the Knicks and what you think about in general. Do you judge teams by their ceiling, their floor, or their average at this point in the season? I'm very curious. I'm going to tell you, I think for most teams, I judge them by their ceiling because I think that's what we get in the playoffs. On the other side, the Timberwolves get a win over the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets are falling. The Wolves, another team that shows what their best punch looks like. We'll discuss them on the other side. To go to the NBA Finals? Well, now's your chance, courtesy of FanDuel. All you have to do is use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. This is a good test of do you believe in the upside? You can bet on those futures there if you're believing in the ceiling of a team. NBA futures let you lock in your pick for who you think will go all the way, whether it's a team to win the championship or a conference title. Just visit FanDuel.com/AllCity to get started. Play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older and present in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let me tell you guys about Shopify. What kind of dreams did you have when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? How about now? Are you thinking about starting your own business or maybe your side hustle? If you've got something to sell, Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Shopify even powers the All City merch store where you can buy awesome hoodies, t-shirts, and more hats, really cool hats on the merch shop. Shopify's got you covered with website creation, product descriptions, email and social media marketing, and so much more. They even have AI tools designed to help you maximize sales. So if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for that $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/allcity. That's shopify.com/allcity. All right, back here, segment 2 of the All-NBA Show. I'm with Jason Timpf. We got Legler back on Wednesday and Friday this week. If you're enjoying the show, this is Real Hoops discussion. We just stick to the X's and O's of the games and break down the games. If you're enjoying it, make sure you're subscribed. As we go to the home stretch, you're not going to want to miss all of the breakdowns. As we mentioned at the top of the show, the NBA backloaded the season with good games. We had a lot of bad games early on in the year. We went months where there was very few good games per week. But you look at the schedule now, and it's like, my God, there's a dozen great games every single week right now in the NBA. Another one that was good, although not for me personally, was Minnesota coming into Denver and sending a bit of a message to the Nuggets, just bullying them and walking away with a 117-108 win. The Nuggets have been reeling, but the Timberwolves are another one of these teams. And, you know, I've believed in the Wolves for all this entire season. I came into the year saying I think that they're title contenders, and they have not proven me right to this point. But one of the reasons I believe in them is of the 25 or 30 games I'll watch of them this season, maybe 25 games I'll watch of them this season, 4 of those are going to be against Denver, and they always bring it against Denver. Now, I catch their games when they don't bring it, so I do know what the other side looks like, but I feel like I get an extended look at their ceiling. And I just know how tough they can be, physically and everything else. But what actually impressed me about this one was Denver threw a scheme at them where they were going to try to get the ball out of Anthony Edwards' hands early on in this game, bring early doubles, and then forced other guys to make shots. I actually thought it was a great strategy, and I don't think the Timberwolves did an A-plus job of it, but they did a consistent job of it. They didn't panic. And that, to me, is the first step to figuring things out is, do you let 2 or 3 bad possessions go and then completely break system, or do you kind of trust, I'm not going to force it, I'm going to figure something out? And I thought the Timberwolves did that in this game.
Yeah, in general with this matchup, it's come in waves seemingly every single time they play. Like, I swear these teams only know how to play 2 ways, which is Denver dominates or Minnesota dominates. Like, it's all runs when these 2 teams run into each other, and it kind of seems to kind of oscillate back and forth on the same dynamic, which is when Jokic and Murray can take care of the basketball and control the flow, keep things in the half court, keep their defense set, pass through their defense, generate quality shots for themselves and for their teammates, they seem to be in control. But Minnesota can have these stretches where they like physically overwhelm Denver. And when they do, and it comes in different ways, like Jokic seems to just always be a little bit late reading doubles in this matchup, and he'll give up a steal to a Dante DiVincenzo, or he'll throw a pass directly into someone's hand because he just was just a split second later. The speed or the physicality was a little overwhelming to him. I thought Jamal Murray in the bench groups was so bad in this.
This is the story
where he was just getting swarmed and he just wasn't able to get decent looks for himself or to pass out of it. And then inevitably what happens is it starts this transition wave, and there is like a real downhill power advantage for Minnesota in this matchup. You saw it in the early 4th quarter with Naz Reid just going right at Cam Johnson, or that nasty Euro step into that lefty floater that he hit. You saw it with Jaden McDaniels. How many times did Jaden McDaniels in this game literally just like run somebody over on his way to the basket and get like a little short floater or something like that? Anthony Edwards going downhill in ball screens. When he does get past Jokic at the level, he can do so much damage for them at the rim. Now, I think there's important context here. Like, when you're dealing with OKC or Minnesota, which is literally these last 2 games for Denver, you're dealing with teams that their main imposition is athleticism and physicality. And the 2 most important players that Denver has for that style of matchup is Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon. They're the guys that allow you to bring Jokic up to the level and not be small and unathletic behind him.
I think, and add Spencer Jones to that list, who's also out in this game, who's I'd say the three of the top four of what you're talking about, along with Christian Brown.
Yeah, exactly. And so like you add in like how many times is Jaden McDaniels going to get matched up with that small of a defender when Spencer Jones and Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson are healthy? Like there's a lot of like that kind of stuff I want to set to the side because that to me is a little bit circumstantial. The stuff specifically with Jokic and Murray having these stretches where they implode against Minnesota's defense, I do think is worth considering here. Because as you look back, whether it be the early fourth quarter, or excuse me, late first quarter game 7 against Oklahoma City when Caruso checked in, or second half against Minnesota game 7 back in 2024, they're capable of having these like 5 to 10 minute stretches of disastrous basketball against these sort of bigger physical teams. That's the stuff I do take credence, or I take seriously. Like, to me, those are the things where it's like, yeah, if Denver's going to accomplish their goals, they're going to literally need to be better as an execution duo, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, without turning the basketball over and generating quality shots. But overall, like, I'm with you. I'm super high on Minnesota. I've been super high on them all season. I view them as a legitimate top-tier championship contender. We talked about those numbers earlier. Minnesota has the 4th best record against teams in the top 10 in point differential and the 2nd best point differential in those games. They've consistently been one of the best fastball teams in the league this season. They're a team that I don't think anybody wants to see, let alone Denver.
I agree.
It was clear to me that the one dynamic, the only other thing I'd add to that is the Jokic 3-point shooting. I just think consistently one of the things I've noticed is like when teams swarm Jokic on the roll. So like Murray, Jokic 2-man game, Jokic rolls. He has the floater and he can make all the reads out of there. And certainly having Aaron Gordon helps with the vertical spacing there. But when they do that, these really athletic teams get pretty good at swarming Jokic on the roll and rotating. So they can kind of close that out. So what does Jokic do to counter that? He pops, because that's like literally one of the hardest rotations to make in the NBA is defending a pick and pop in a traditional drop coverage. And it's so important for him to be hitting that pick and pop 3, and he just hasn't been. And that's the other thing that kind of concerns me specifically with the Stars. And so I do think there's a lot to take away, but it's just such a physical mismatch when Denver's down all their forwards like this.
Well, you mentioned, you almost just briefly went over the vertical spacing. I actually think it's the reason for Denver's struggles, especially in the clutch this year. But what you're talking about, turnovers, timely turnovers, and then Jokic being forced to pop a lot, is Denver does not have an Aaron Gordon facsimile. If they had one, it'd be Spencer Jones, who's also been out. But they don't have a guy that has gravity along the baseline. And so it's very easy to pack the paint against the 2-man game, over the last 2 months against Denver. And I think that is part of why I'm less concerned, just because I've seen this play out over and over again. And to your point, Jokic has popped and decided to shoot a bunch of threes, which I actually think is correct. He just hasn't made them. And it is a concern, because if I'm a team trying to guard Denver and I get in a pinch, I'm not trying this right off the bat, but if I get in a pinch late in a game, I think I would take my chances on Jokic taking jog out at him, lightly contested jog out at him threes than any other option Denver can present, because he does have these nights where he goes 2 of 13, and that's your best bet. Just to make him your shooter. He also doesn't want to take those shots. I think he's been a very willing 3-point shot taker this year, but the fact that he hasn't made them is a little concerning. But
do you think he's just trying to get his rhythm? Do you think he's just like
absolutely?
Shoot? I think 100%. He's just trying to shoot his way out of a slump, right?
I don't even think it's shoot his way out of a slump. I think he knows that this is how teams are going to guard him in the play. I think he knows that pivotal games, he's going to end up having to take 6 or 7 threes in a quarter. And if teams are going to do that, he has to hit a bunch of them. If you think back to Game 7 against Minnesota, a lot of this was fatigue. Denver just ran out of gas in that Game 7, blew a 20-point lead. He looked
so tired in that second half.
But Jokic also took a bunch of threes, in part because Minnesota said, we can't stop them, so let's just force the one shot that has a big variance to it. That's Jokic, if he's going to take 10 threes in this half, let's just force that and hope he goes cold, and sure enough, he did. So I think he knows that is part of the game plan, and he just wants to mentally put himself in the space of, don't hesitate, you have to let it fly if they're going to do this. Here's the real story of this game, though. And it's a credit to the Timberwolves know the Nuggets better than anybody. Obviously, Tim Conley, Chris Finn, all these guys, they have so much crossover there. They know the Nuggets really well. Denver dominated them in the first quarter. It was an absolute dominant quarter from Denver. Up by 9, and it could have been more. And the Wolves took the lead in 2 minutes and 18 seconds. And this has been the problem for Denver. When people are saying, oh, yeah, one guy's going to solve this, it's not one guy. It's 3 rotation pieces. It's Aaron Gordon, Peyton Watson, and Spencer Jones. Now, yes, other teams have been able to handle this, and I think it is a credit to those teams. And you take something off of Denver. But what really is happening in their last handful of losses, including to the OKC Thunder, is Denver builds a big lead. They have to go to their bench, which is really their third string in this, and they completely melt down. To blow that big of a lead in 2 minutes and 18 seconds, and it didn't stop there, by the way. Then the Wolves went up 11 themselves. It was like a 20-point swing in a period of like 6 minutes. That's really hard to overcome, and it's happened to Denver 2 games in a row against contending teams. And I just don't think it's going to be that egregious once they have a full complement of players back. I think their rotation makes a lot more sense then, and it doesn't make a ton of sense at the moment.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. You're playing with less talent in those lineups. The only thing that really stood out to me, because where I think it will really help is specifically Jamal Murray, because like Jamal Murray has to create everything with those groups right now, and it's just really tough. Also, like Jonas Valanciunas has been a valuable addition in my opinion, but he's very matchup dependent. There are certain matchups where it's like, oh, like Nimi Keita is just too damn small for him. Like he's just gonna bully him to get whatever he wants. But it's like when it's a Gobert, when it's that Chet Hartenstein front line, like there's certain front lines where Jonas doesn't have a big physical advantage, and then it turns into Jamal Murray dribble probe until he can create a shot for himself, and they're struggling to create space for him in those groups. And this is where I think, honestly, like where the Cam Johnson hasn't been able to put anything on the ground this year has been a real hit to this team. Is like, it used to be that you would have another source of offense, whether it be Aaron Gordon or it be Michael Porter Jr. But with Aaron Gordon being out, with Cam Johnson being unable to do anything off the bounce this year, it's turned those lineups into Jamal Murray units. And what ended up happening against Minnesota in particular is like every Jamal miss or turnover was like a run out layup for Bones Highland or for Ayo Dosunmu. And those Minnesota groups play so fast in transition off of their defense. And so it just kind of played directly into their hands. To your point, different matchups, Jonas is going to be an ass kicker in. And then 2, when you actually have more of your better perimeter talent out there, you can create an easier job for Jamal Murray.
Well, I think Big Val, I worry that he's not actually viable in a playoffs against your best teams, in large part because he's not that dominant inside, and he's very vulnerable on the perimeter. And teams, I think, he has to win his minutes on the boards and on the low post for you to tilt that in your favor. And he just has not done that very often at all this year. So I look at it and think Big Val I don't know that he's a playable player in every playoff series. In fact, I think about half of them, especially the later rounds, like OKC, completely unplayable. I don't know that he should touch the court in an OKC series. I think he was like minus 21 in 12 minutes or something the other night against OKC. Unplayable. But to your point, when Aaron Gordon's back, he's your backup center, and that's how Denver has rolled in the playoffs, and it works a lot better. They don't have him available, and it throws everything out of whack.
All of Denver's small ball groups are better now as currently constructed because you find Spencer Jones, because of the rise of Peyton Watson. You're so deep at forward now that when you're healthy, you have the flexibility to play both of those styles, which actually makes some sense to me, because I think there are going to be some matchups where it's like, it might be a Houston bench group against Clint Capella where Jonas can play, right? It might be It might be a Lakers match. Like, what if it's 3-6 with the Lakers? Jonas is going to kick Jackson Hayes' ass. You know what I mean? So like the whole thing is like, it's a perfectly acceptable pitch to have in your bag, so to speak, for the regular season schedule. And when you have a viable small ball look, which they should have when they're healthy, and I'd even throw Zeke Naji into that group as well. I mean, he played really well at the 5 in some small ball groups during the Jokic injury. So like, I think all of it is more about flexibility than anything else. It just was abundantly clear to me, I agree with you, that in these matchups, Jonas was borderline useless. You just didn't have access to your small ball group because all your forwards are out. Exactly. So what are you going to do?
Exactly. If we go to real concerns, though, for the Nuggets, I mean, Aaron Gordon's health is a real concern. I expect him to be back within a week, maybe as early as Thursday for that matchup with the Lakers. I expect him to come back, probably be rusty for a little bit, but I think he'll obviously make a huge difference. Peyton Watson, maybe a week after that. Spencer Jones, hopefully sometime in the middle of those or even earlier. So I think Denver is close to having their full complement of players. And they have a very favorable schedule after the next week and a half. They get, I think, 11 of their last 13 or 14 at home against some pretty weak competition. I expect Denver to be a late blooming team, like to really make a run late. But Aaron Gordon's health is a real concern. He has just not been able to stay healthy for a season and a half now. So expecting him to come back and just be a consistently healthy player, I think, is a huge concern. I'm concerned about their Jokic's conditioning, quite honestly. I mean, part of this is he's carrying a heavy load, but he has worn down late in games, and I think that even he and the team realizes it because they've talked about wanting to push these guys down the stretch to get them in shape to be able to handle it. He's going to have to be in better shape because teams are going to really attack him, and he has been in better shape in previous years. And the Cam Johnson question is the most interesting one here because Cam Johnson has done a lot of things really well. I mean, I see a lot of people just look at the raw numbers between MPJ last year and Cam Johnson. I just don't think that's the way to look at it. You could look at it and say Denver's offense this year is better than it was last year. So where do you account for that? Even though they haven't had Aaron Gordon, it's been better. But what's wrong with Cam Johnson is you have to find out how to be a third option. He's naturally a third option, which is weird. Michael Porter's naturally a second option. Cam Johnson's naturally a third, fourth, fifth option, and yet he's struggling to be aggressive in those moments, which is bizarre. But more than anything, I think it's just on him. You know, like there's not some people, you got to run some more stuff for him for this or that. He needs to have the confidence to be aggressive in the pockets where he needs to be aggressive. And right now he looks like a guy with zero confidence to put the ball on the floor, to get the foul line jumper, to pull up from three. And it doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how a guy can be this shell-shocked. And an offense that's number one in the NBA. It's not like, I'm about to ruin something. It's, hey, this thing's working really well and they need me to do this. Cam Johnson, I kind of like the storyline because right now, I think everybody's burying him. He won't be this, he won't be that. All signs point to that. But I'm looking at it right now going, this is what sports are about. It's very clear that you just have to mentally toughen up and find a way to assert yourself in the moments you need to. And he's got 21 games to do that. I don't know if he will. I'd probably bet against it. But it is, to me, a good storyline.
Yeah, there was a stretch right before his injury, 17 games, where he was shooting 52% from three on 5 attempts per game. And I think that really is what I was seeing with Cam there towards the end before he hurt his knee was like essentially a higher floor, lower ceiling version of Michael Porter Jr. In that I shouldn't even say version because they play different positions. To me, the Nuggets basically used to play 2 power forwards, and now they play a small forward and a power forward when they're healthy. But like Cam was less mistake prone, better perimeter defender, more of like it just like on any given night, solid kind of guy that wasn't going to have the explosions that you were going to get from a Michael Porter Jr. What's been tough as of late is like the 3-point shooting. To me, he's just in a little bit of a slump right now as he's working to get his rhythm back. I agree with you. His confidence looks shaken, which there are certain players like Michael Porter Jr.'s confidence would not get shaken. Let's just put it.
One of his best traits. One of his best traits, man.
Exactly. So like that's definitely a significant part of the downgrade there. But where I was really annoyed with him yesterday was the defensive end of the floor, where it was like I'm not used to seeing him let go of that end of the rope where it's like Bones Highland's just beating you on simple right to left crossovers to get all the way to the basket. You're jumping, taking bad angles on Naz Reid and keeping your stance open against a power player, which is literally never going to work. Like all these little basic fundamental things where like I could almost feel like his poor shooting was getting in his head.
I agree. That's what I thought. He was getting his butt kicked on defense, I felt, because he was mopey, because he was having a rough game, and you could just feel his like shoulder slumping. And it's like, hey, man, the battle is still going. Like, let's keep fighting there because they're going at you.
Yeah, like, and the biggest swing of the game was when he missed that transition 3 on the right wing, which was like a good wide open look. And then you go down to the other end and Naz Reid crosses over and hits a pull-up 3 in your face. And he contested it. And I felt really bad for him because we've all been there. Like every basketball player's been there where like you miss an open shot and then like a dude hits a contested 3 on the other end and you're like, oh, like that's
the worst.
It's part of the game. It's how it goes. But like
buck up though.
Yeah, exactly. The point is like that's what happens in any singular possession. It's a make or miss sport, right? So like it is what it is. But yeah, I think I'm with you. Like I think there's 2 things that I would say. Number one, There is no way to look at this as anything other than a disaster that they traded Michael Porter Jr. for Cam, and that Cam's been mostly bad, and that Michael Porter Jr. has been mostly good, and that you gave up a first-round pick. So,
well, the argument here's what solidifies it is the argument was they could have gotten Bruce Brown and Tim Hardaway Jr. So it wasn't those guys; it was Big Val. That trade allowed them to get Big Val, who's also been bad.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a double whammy of bad, right? But like the flip side of that is the other thing I would say is like I'm with you. Like they're like. I'm rooting for Cam, and I want him so bad to just hit a big shot in a big spot and shut everybody up because like ultimately like it's a tough, like I will say like he is under a lot of pressure in the sense that like you get traded with a first round pick to essentially be the guy that vaults a previous championship team back into contention, and you're playing like crap and your team is struggling as a result. Like I'm rooting for him, and I don't think it's over. There's a version of this too, where again, like when we talked about this before the season, there was a thought process. Like you've got more of a perimeter defender type guy in Cam Johnson, which allows Aaron Gordon to take less of a perimeter load. It also creates these like actual 4-out spacing looks that they didn't have in the past because Aaron Gordon used to not shoot the ball very well. There's like a version of this that can still come together. And I'm with you. It's not over. There's still a lot of basketball to be played. And this Denver team is still very good. I'm still a believer in them when they're healthy. I've never backed off on them being a top 2 championship contender this season. I'm just hoping that Cam can find a way to play his part in the success for this group.
If we go to the other side, I mean, Denver has a really tough schedule for the next 10 days or so. Really, really tough. After that, it loosens up. My prediction all year has been, I think these next 10 games are going to be a continuation of what we saw. By the way, they're losing a lot of these games close. It's not like they're getting destroyed outside of their first OKC matchup. Most of these games are coming down to the wire and they're falling apart in the clutch, but they have 10 more days where I think it's going to be like this. Some bad losses, some decent wins that are not that inspiring, and I think they have a great home stretch. So that's my prediction. We'll see what happens. But if we go back to the Timberwolves, who are the winners of this game, like I said with Karl-Anthony Towns, I thought Julius Randle was appropriately out of the way in this game. And this is one of the big questions I have is he's obviously a great player, but their team seems to run better to me when I watch them run better when he is very selective in how aggressive he is. Now, some of this is the injury he's got right now, but I thought this last game, 14 points, 5 of 12 shooting, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, a steal and a block was a perfect game from him because he wasn't disruptive and he made these plays in little pockets.
Yeah, he was being guarded by Jokic for part of the game and did some work in pick and pops that I thought was successful. Again, he plays kind of like a passing fulcrum for them a lot out of the high post too, and like face up ISO type situations. But ultimately, like this team is at their best when they're playing in transition off of their defense and when they're playing physically aggressive towards the basket. And I do think Julius is a part of that. And I think honestly, like when I feel like Minnesota can be overwhelming is when it's this like we are bigger, faster, stronger than you towards the rim over and over and over again, and there's nothing you can do about it. And like when you see that fourth quarter run where it's like Naz Reid is going downhill at the rim nonstop, and when you see that early second quarter run where it's Ayo Dosunmu and Bones Highland going downhill towards the rim, when it's Anthony Edwards attacking the rim with patience like he can, that's when they're at their best. I think it's all about just hanging on to the rope defensively for them. Because again, as you mentioned, they're a team that's been one of the worst like effort and energy teams night to night throughout the regular season. They have been playing better as of late, to give them some credit. They've won 11 of their last 15 after a pretty up and down stretch for the previous couple of months. Statistically, it's still been a little dicey in that span, but they've also played some tougher competition. I can't get enough of this Timberwolves team. I think the Dosunmu fit is awesome. Like there was a play, he had a big transition 3 off the right wing, but he had another play where he caught off of Ant, a little swing pass on the right wing, and ripped a closeout and got all the way to the rim to the basket. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, this is just another really high-level offensive player on a team that has a brilliant combination of athleticism and shooting talent. And so they have this ability to pressure the rim and counter it with jump shooting that not many teams in this league have. And it's a big part of why their offensive fastball is so damn good.
The last one I have for you, just real quick, because I know we're running late here, but Bones Highland, when he's good, they're phenomenal. I almost feel like they need him. And I talked about this a month ago, and I know a lot of people were laughing at me for making him such an important piece of what they're going to be in the playoffs. But I actually think he is, in part because they need scoring, shooting, and they need like on-ball shot creation. And his best games, he's like very good at this. Like, you know, you could almost see him as a starter on a bad team level good at it. But when he's off the bench and he gives you the spark of shot creation that he gave, 18 points on 6 of 7 shooting, including 3 of 3 from 3, it takes him to a whole nother level. The problem is, I think Bones is going to kill teams like Denver that are at best medium defensively, especially on the perimeter. They don't have like shutdown guys. But against good defenses, I actually don't have a ton of faith in him being able to do this. Like against OKC, I don't see him doing this to OKC's defenders at all. And so that's the biggest thing I have pause for the Timberwolves is I think they need his shot creation, and he'll be shut down by the best defenders.
Yeah, to your point, like I remember even back to when he was in Denver, when teams allow him to dribble freely from 25, 30 feet, and he can settle into that pull-up three, because he's very good at the pull-up three that's a little deep, like in that like 26, 27-foot range. Yeah. When he's allowed to kind of like comfortably handle the basketball and get into his jump shot, he's very, very good. But there are just going to be teams that are better ball pressure teams that can get up underneath him. And those are the teams that are going to cause him problems. I 100% agree. I do think Dosunmu is a nice counter to that. Like Minnesota will always have the card in their bag where they can shrink their rotation. And the bottom line is they have 7 awesome players. When you have Dosunmu coming off the bench, when you have Nasri coming off the bench, they have such a good top 7, and I do think Dosunmu will be able to handle the uptick in defensive intensity and physicality. So I think, to your point, I think he's kind of like Valanciunas in the sense that like he's a great guy to have in the bag as a depth piece, but I don't think they necessarily need him if they had to piece together a Game 7 rotation with like 7.5 players.
Well, we went a little bit long here today, JT. Do you have 10 more minutes? I mean,
let's do it, man.
You have to get at it. All right. I want to go. We had a fun topic just to round up. We always like to end a little bit with something a little more fun. And I don't know about you. I don't usually watch college basketball till about right now. And yet I've been obsessed with these 3 guys, Dybantsa, Peterson, and Boozer. I find them all so fascinating. And I thought it'd be fun if we talked about where we think, it's early, I'll probably change this before the draft, but where we think that'd be most fun if they were to wind up. And before we get there, it's kind of a fun debate. How do you order the 3? If you had to start your team around these 3 guys, do you have a set 1, 2, 3 right now for you personally?
So first of all, I'm with you. I barely ever watch college hoops this time of year, but I've been so locked in, not just because Dybantsa, Peterson, and Boozer, but also because my Arizona Wildcats are the best team in the damn country. Okay.
Yeah,
so
they
like
look really good.
Super stoked about that. But let me just put it this way. I've been watching the University of Arizona my entire life, and I've watched some really good Arizona teams with some really good players, and this is the best team that I've watched.
They're overwhelming physically, man. They really they just swarm. Even athletic teams, they're way more athletic.
Absolutely. And like even their really good teams, I was like, oh yeah, this is a Sweet 16 team at best because they can't shoot or they have this issue, they have that issue. We're so good at guard. Braden Burries and Jaden Bradley are both so good, and we've got great rim protection. Our wings can all like shoot and play. Our wings are like 3-level scorers that can defend. It's like crazy. Arizona's great, but that's a topic for another day. I have a clear 1, 2, 3 for me.
Clear.
Yeah. I have Dybantsa number 1, I have Peterson number 2, and I have Boozer number 3. But most importantly, Adam, I like have dream destinations for all 3.
Oh, I love it.
I can't wait to get into. So
all right, well, let's do it. We'll start with your order then. I don't know what my order is. I'll tell you this. I love Peterson. I understand. Like, I'm completely spooked by this whole like him not playing thing. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I'll reserve my judgment for later on as we see how that unfolds. But I just love his game. I just cannot believe how polished he is. But all 3 of them are so good. So, all right, let's go to it. Let's go to Dybantsa number 1. What's your dream destination?
I want Dybantsa to go to Sacramento. And here's why. Because Sacramento needs a player that is so damn good and so indomitable as a basketball force and personality that he can overcome their flagrant incompetence. And to me, that's what AJ Dybantsa is. Okay. Also, he kind of plays a position that they've never had. They've never had like a traditional 4 that can really play. So like to me, AJ Dybantsa going to Sacramento, let him be the hero that saves that franchise from absolute disaster. The reason why I'm so high on Dybantsa too, just really quickly, I don't think we've seen a combination of big skill forward, like meaning like Kevin Durant-esque ability to score at all three levels as an off-the-dribble shot creator, but that also can get to the rim 7 times a game in college spacing and shoot almost
with you
when he gets there. Like,
yeah.
you're talking about a weird hybrid between like a Kevin Durant, Paul George prospect and one of these big basket attackers like Giannis or Zion. Now, he's not those guys, to be clear. Those guys are another level of basket attacker, but he's closer to that than people think.
Yeah.
And like when I watch him on tape, there is a relentless downhill just aggression that I think is super rare in a big, slender forward like him. I think he's got a really high defensive floor when he gets some experience in the NBA. I'm just super high on Dybantsa. I think he's a franchise-altering talent. Can't wait to. I would love to see him in Sacramento save those guys from themselves.
What I like about all of these guys, but I think it's especially true of Dybantsa, is they have this skill set that is really polished. Like, they're really skilled for the and with him, obviously, a perfect body. But those skill sets can sometimes, and actually often, it's like they're so good at lower levels that as they get to higher levels, it's slow to translate. Like, okay, now you have to learn like how to be efficient and how to do all this stuff. Dybantsa's learning curve seems really high there. His skill set came in, and that's what I thought of him. And then 2 months later, I'm like, oh, he's figured it out. Now he knows how to deploy that skill set. And it makes you think that once he gets to the NBA level with training and everything else, that curve will continue and he'll really be able to use all of his tools. But I can't get with you on Sacramento. Sacramento. It wasn't even
Sacramento's got to get somebody out.
It wasn't. I thought you were going to say because they have pieces
or
this or that. I think Utah Jazz was my pick here. And my secondary pick was the Atlanta Hawks, and third I went Indiana Pacers.
You need another forward, Adam.
Hey, well, that's what's so funny. So the Hawks I was looking at, and I'm just like, I know it's a lot of overlap, but you give me Kuminga, Johnson, and Dybantsa, and I'm like, all right, so you're the most athletic team of the last 20 years already,
Yeah.
and they all have a versatile skill set to some degree that you can maybe see it working, so I thought that'd be fun. But my number one was Utah. They're going with this supersized lineup. And I still don't think, as much as I like Keontae George, I still don't know if they have their cornerstone guy. That would make Utah, in my opinion, a for sure going forward title contender. Not right away, obviously there'll be a ramp up, but you give so much length, athleticism, strength, size, but you don't sacrifice all the skill sets. And of course, he gets to stay in Utah, which I think is kind of always a little bit cool. So to me, that was where I went, but the Hawks and Pacers also made some sense. Let's go to Darren Peterson just because I want to run through these. He was next on your list. He's number one on mine.
He's my Jazz guy. When I watch the Jazz and I look at the way they're structured, Keontae George is your point. You got this Laurie, Jaren Jackson, Walker Kessler, 3, 4, 5. You're going to already have some spacing concerns where jump shooting, I think, becomes at a premium. This is why a guy like Svi Mikhailuk has looked so important for them at stretches this year. And I just think Darren Peterson would step into the NBA as day one, just a way better version of Svi Mikhailuk, right? And what I kind of look at too,
what a compliment.
I know, right? Yeah, it's a big high bar that we're setting there. The other thing too is I love Will Hardy's offense and the way that he's constantly using off-ball action with his centers more as passing fulcrums and the kinds of quality looks he can generate for Lauri Markkanen, either deep seals inside or quick pops to the perimeter for threes. I think off-ball action with Darren Peterson and Lauri Markkanen would be impossible to guard. I just think he would be the perfect movement shooter, good defensive player at the 2-guard spot to slot right next to Keontae George that would round out that entire lineup. Let me just put it this way. If the Jazz got Keontae George, if the Jazz got Darren Peterson with Keontae George and their big three, the Lauri Markkanen, Jared Jackson, Walker Kessler group stayed healthy, I would put them as a shoe-in above the play-in next year.
Are you sure those two would fit, though, those two guards, Keontae George and
Absolutely.
Peterson?
Yeah, Darren Peterson is an off-ball shooter. I think Darren Peterson, everyone sees Darren Peterson and thinks Anthony Edwards. I think Sonic's Ray Allen. I think
that's interesting.
Off-ball shooting guard, that deadly movement shooter, run some second side action, but also Keontae's a bad defensive player, and I think Darren's going to be a very good defensive player in the NBA. I think Darren in Utah would be a perfect fit.
My worry there, I think Keontae George kind of swallows up a lot of possessions. He's very good, so it makes sense. But my fear is that Darren Peterson would not become the player I think he can be there. and might slot into the Ray Allen comp's interesting because Ray Allen was so good off the dribble, like he could do all of these other stuff and he got the opportunity to do it. But if he was paired alongside another elite guard, he might have become more of late career Ray Allen, which, 1-2 dribbles, get rid of the ball. So that's what I would fear in Utah. I went with Washington Wizards number 1, Brooklyn Nets number 2. And the reason, and then I had Hawks 3 just because I like him, defensive-minded guards out there in Atlanta. They probably could use on-ball creation. But the reason I went with Washington and Brooklyn is those teams need a lead guy. This is kind of your Sacramento Kings take. Washington I'm worried about because they have a bunch of players I like but nobody I love. You give them one guy I love, and I would say, okay, now he completes it and gives you something to be excited about. Same goes for Brooklyn. They need somebody, although they have a million guards. So maybe it doesn't work. But Washington, to me, is where I'd send him to go. I think that one makes sense. By the way, Washington has great odds at the number 1 pick. They have a lot of different ways they can get it, including, just directly. Let's go to Boozer. Cam Boozer's like consistently third, and everybody's like, when you rank these, I find that interesting because I feel like he might have maybe the highest floor. I just think he's going to be a great player. And when you talk about fit, I actually think he fits on almost everybody. But where did you go number 1 with him?
So it's ironic. I'm like one player off from each of your teams that you're choosing. Washington is my favorite Boozer destination. I think that he makes a lot of sense as like an offensive fulcrum for them, especially alongside their bigs. Like I think he would fit really well with Sarr because he brings a power element that Sarr can struggle with. I think he fits really well with Anthony Davis because Boozer can shoot and because Boozer is a really good passing fulcrum. I think they'd have really good high-low action. Like, can you imagine Boozer playing out of the high post and spinning off of a post defender and throwing a lob to Anthony Davis cutting along the baseline?
Could see it.
It also, like, they have guys like, I know they just signed Tristan Vucevic. They've got guys that can play the 4, but like to me, Cam Boozer would represent a foundational 4 for them. And then you can like, one of my issues with a guy like Darren Peterson going to Washington is I really like Trey Johnson, and I think they're kind of redundant. They both kind of play that off-ball 2 guard that can really score the basketball off the dribble. And so I kind of piece it together in a way where I imagine, Trae Young, Trey Johnson, Bilal Coulibaly, and then this Cam Boozer with Alex Sarr lineup, or Cam Boozer with Anthony Davis line. Like, I just think the 2 of those guys would go together really well. And also, I mean, have you seen the weird reports that Anthony Davis doesn't even really want to be in Washington? So like who knows how long that's going to last anyway. That Washington's my favorite Cam Boozer destination.
It's an interesting argument for it. Like we said, I think Cam Boozer is one of the guys that I think would actually fit in a lot of places. I went number 1 Thunder. I don't even want to talk about it. I just think I don't want to talk about it because I don't want it.
Can you imagine him next to Chet? Oh my God.
I mean, let's just wrap up the rest of the next decade. Let's take it off and we'll circle back in the 2040s.
Can we fix the draft, please? Can we just one time, Adam Silver, can we fix the draft and give OKC like the 13th pick or something like that?
We got to do it. Adam Silver's got to do it. Like I've never liked, this idea of it being rigged, but you got to rig it this year. If he goes there, he just fits their profile so well. Smart, unselfish, tough, versatile, fits so well next to Chet. It would be a bummer, honestly, because I think it would be just too perfect. But the other one I have, and it's kind of in the same category, but I don't think this team is nearly as good as the Thunder, is the Pacers. I actually think he would be very interesting on the Pacers because of how many different things he can do. He can bring the ball up on the break. They love to play fast. He'd give him another option. He might actually speed them up in that way, even though he's not the fastest player. He's able to do so much that you can get your guards out quickly. And then he just can do a little bit of everything that fits their style, where you need guys that can read the court, cut, make plays, dribble, pass. I just think he would be incredible for them and would fit in right away. And I
wonder if they could be good enough defensively with him at the 5, because that would be absolutely frightening if you could imagine like a Boozer, Siakam, Nesmith, Nembhard, Halliburton lineup.
It might be like a death lineup, like not their go-to high volume lineup, but one they deploy strategically to where you're like, crap, we have to build everything around not getting killed in the minutes with him.
Yeah, like a death lineup kind of idea. Indiana I like a lot. Here's the thing. Indiana I like for all these guys. The thing with Indiana is like they're already a pretty well-formed championship contender when they're fully healthy. So it's like
Same with OKC. It's kind of cheating.
Exactly. Like it feels easier for me to be like, here's this bad team where this young guy can come in and put them over the top, so to speak. Although I guess I broke my own rule there with the Utah comp. But anyway,
that's how it goes. Well, let us know, man. I'm so curious. What do you guys think? If you've watched these players, where do you want to see them going? I think there's arguments for a lot of different teams. So it's kind of interesting to check out. But that is our show for today. 2 deep dives on 2 great games, 2 great matchups, and then a little bit of fun at the end. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure you're subscribed. Share it on social media. You guys have helped us grow the show to this, and it only gets better from here as we get to the home stretch of the NBA season. Tim Legler's back on Wednesday and Friday this week, so you're not going to want to miss that. In the meantime, hit the like button on the way out.
We all silly like the mayor.